So these are going to be the best decks to play before the nerfs come out, and let's just jump into it. The first one is going to be Naga Demon Hunter. It is by far the best deck in the game right now. Win rate wise, the games are fast, so you're able to climb very quickly. It's very simple to play, and you basically have two stages. One, you play really aggressive and you play for the board, and then two, after your board gets wiped a couple of times, you try to finish off your opponent with weapons, Kurtrus, and spells. Spells usually in combination with Lady Steno, and you go more for a burst package. And that's basically how you play this game, or this deck, every single time. I will say that this deck will have one card that probably get nerfed, and that is probably Drekthar. So if you do craft it, don't break the bank and craft every single legendary until you see what is going to be nerfed. Right now, I think Drekthar and Kurtrus are the two most important, and if they end up getting nerfed, you can just cash in on the extra 3,200 dust, and then craft another deck, because most of the other cards in here are just commons and some rares. The next deck on this list is Buff Paladin, but before you freak out because you see this deck has 12 freaking legendaries in it, just know that Mech Paladin runs very similarly and has only a slightly lower win rate. Both will be in the description. They both basically want to pump up your hand and or minions on the board, and they all have giant stats and Divine Shield, and you overwhelm your opponent and there's really just nothing you can do about it. This deck is a little bit more flexible and has some more burst because you run Mr. Smite, but the mech version is totally fine. It's only behind by about 0.4% win rate, so both are good. And yeah, I don't think it's necessarily on the chopping block to get nerfed, because it hasn't been one of those decks that's been mega complained about. So I actually think this is going to be strong after the nerfs as well. The next deck on this list is going to be my second least favorite deck in the game right now, and that is Quest Hunter. Quest Hunter is able to just do a ton of damage directly. There's not a lot of interaction. It's not fun to play against, but that doesn't mean it's necessarily not fun to play as. If you like playing a lot of cards on turn like 7 or 8 and just comboing off and doing a ton of damage from hand, this is probably a pretty fun and good deck for you. However, I will say that similar to Demon Hunter, this deck is probably going to have two cards that are on the chopping block to get nerfed. The quest itself, potentially, but most likely Drekthar. What I would do personally is I would not craft Raj if making this deck, because he's not absolutely essential, and only craft him to finish the deck if we know if Drekthar and the quest are not being nerfed. If they are being nerfed and you've crafted these cards, you just get 3,200 dust back and you could potentially craft something else. And then also the Beastalker Tavish, he's really good in any hunter deck. You could craft him because he's very flexible, but again, you don't have to. Just focus on the main two, and if they get nerfed, refund them, craft something else. So the next deck on this list is going to be the Control Warrior. You don't have to necessarily run this build. This is just the one I was using most recently, but it's really, really strong. And even though there are a couple of cards in this deck that might get nerfed, like from the depths as well as the Nelly, the Great Thresher, I do think that the deck will be strong regardless. It's still going to have really good removal, tons of armor, so it's hard to burst down, ways of counterplaying combos with Mutanus. You're going to have your own late game powerhouse in Kazakusan. You have a whole bunch of stuff that you could potentially do in order to win the game in the late and even mid game sometimes, depending on how lucky you get with from the depths. And I will say, if you want to run this deck without a couple of the legendaries, the ones that I think are the least important are Rokara and Raid Boss Onyxia. You could replace them with the Onyxian Warder until you see what's going to get nerfed. And then once you see that, you can maybe commit a little bit more dust to the deck if you want. Also, Shield Slam would also be good to replace one of the cards. And then last but not least, it's going to be Amulet Mech Mage. It's just a really good deck. I mean, you have a huge amount of burst using the Mech Shark. You have good tempo. You have mana cheat with the Seafloor Gateway, which is basically just a palm reading for mech minions, which is basically every single card in your deck. And then you also have decent late game because you have the dragons, you have a colossal minion, you have a way of generating a lot more minions with the sweeper, with the deep run engineer, as well as the gorilla, not to mention the amalgam. You have insane generation. Like, this deck doesn't run out of resources. It's just an aggro deck that just keeps its foot on the gas the entire game. And if you like tempo / aggro decks like that with the potential for a couple of big late game bombs, this is the deck for you. Now we're on to the 3 honorable mentions, and these are decks that I think are really good personally, and although their win rates aren't necessarily the highest, I've had either A, a ton of success with them, or B, watched other people have a ton of success with them. And the first one is going to be Naga Naga Mage, and it's going to be the version with the hero power, but you also throw in 1 ignite, so you still have ignite to go infinite late game. And basically the idea behind this is you overwhelm your opponent with a Siren and either a 1 or 2 cost Naga turn 5 or 6, and then you just combo off, get a giant board, generate a ton of resources, and then if the game drags on for a long time because they're able to kill off your surprise turn 5 or 6 board, you'll eventually win the game with ignites, randomly generated spells, as well as a huge hero power. It's an insanely good deck. I think I am literally 9-0 with it right now. No, I'm 9-2 with it, which is still really good. And if you include a slightly different version that runs ignites, not hero power, I'm currently 19-5 with at least some iteration of Naga Mage. Next is going to be Battlecry Shaman. I've played this deck a decent amount. I've seen Kibler play this deck quite a bit, and I think the deck is really, really good. You got some decent removal. You can double activate things like Mutanus in order to eat win conditions of a potential control matchup, as well as then copy the Battlecry with Brilliant Macaw if by some chance you just happen to miss one of their big win conditions. And then you're able to, against board-based matchups, constantly freeze your opponent's board with Snowfall Guardians, Zola-ing the Snowfall Guardian, and then also being able to copy them with the Brilliant Macaw. You can freeze their board for up to 5 turns, which is extremely powerful if your opponent gets board locked. Especially against like Druid, they'll play like Anixia, thinking, oh, I got you, I just got an 8-8 and then a whole board of 2 1s out. You're like, no, I'm freezing your board, and then I'm just gonna set up my lethal over the next 2 or 3 turns, and there's nothing you can do about it. It's really good. I think Shaman is probably the most underrated class right now, so if we want to surprise people, this is definitely the deck to do it with. The last deck on this list is going to be Mill Warlock. Yes, the Curse of Agony build works as well, but I like the version with the Selfish Shellfish. I'm currently 20-7 with this deck. It is so good. I absolutely love it. You've got insane removal. You've got really good removal with the Entitled Customer. Like, your opponent fills the board, doesn't matter. You're doing 9 or 8 damage to their entire board. It's enough to kill Naga Giants against Demon Hunters, which is hugely important. And you have enough early game removal and healing to deal with things like Demon Hunter and Mage. Overall, I think this deck is surprisingly one of the better ones, but because it's Warlock, it's kind of hard to play, so it'll definitely have a bit of a learning curve, but I absolutely love it. I would highly recommend playing this deck. It is my favorite deck so far of this expansion, which maybe I'm a little bit biased and that's why I'm putting it on here, but I really think that it's good enough to definitely be considered, especially after nerfs. If nerfs happen and some of the worst matches for this deck are no longer seeing as much play and the meta slows down, this deck is going to do amazing because you're able to basically just beat slow decks with a combo and there's nothing they can do about it. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Hope you guys enjoyed all the deck codes. I know there are some I probably missed. I was just trying to shorten it to like an 8-deck guide this time because the nerfs are coming out soon, and I'll probably have a longer one next week after playing a little bit more with those nerfs. So hopefully you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one.